You are listening to Gaming the Podcast. My name is John Robertson and I am joined by Stace Harmon. And this week, inspired by the release of Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins, we are talking about finding the joy in trashy, B-movie style games. Games that are so bad that they're actually good, or at least games that are good despite housing some or many questionable elements. Here's a clip of Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins.
Look, the crystals can sense each other.
You have one too, don't you?
My mission is to kill Chaos. That's all I know.
Me too.
Good. We're all on the same hunt.
I'm Jack.
Jed.
Ash.
So, you've played more Stranger of Paradise than I have, and we'll get into the details, but what are your general thoughts on this trashy B-movie of a game?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, it is exactly that, and it's that it has all of the hallmarks. You know, it's so bad, it's good. Kind of the dialogue specifically, and the writing and the voice acting that goes with that. The direction of the cutscenes. There are some, I think, unintentionally kind of trashy. Or some of the production values are kind of miss the mark. I think there's some editing choices that I think haven't been made on purpose.
Of
but any game, there's some weird, like, just things that look unintentional and are just poorly done. Like some of the audio is sort of, there'll be audio clipping over each other and stuff like that, which isn't, that doesn't enhance the sort of cheesy, trashy vibe. It just looks poorly done. But for the most part, it is, I think, very deliberate. And any game, I won't go too heavily into spoilers, but I will say that any game that starts and ends in the way that this game does, there's some very deliberate choices that have been made here.
Well, let's talk about that very step, because I burst out laughing. Okay, so there'll be minor spoilers here, but I don't think this isn't a spoiler that's going to ruin the game. So right at the start of the game, My Way, Frank Sinatra plays, and there's just this guy, and it's just like a wheat field. Like literally, like I was thinking, like
fields of gold.
Yeah, like how great would it be? I was expecting Theresa May to just like run past, being naughty, to like My Way, which would have been like a 10 out of 10 game in my mind. Like if they'd done that, just even if it's just for the UK release or whatever, it's the only ones that are going to get it.
Little Easter egg.
But yeah, that's such a weird choice. My Way, like it just, and there is something. Oh yeah, there's a cutscene before that where it shows like sort of in a distant land or something. This big evil person is killing all of these knights that look like they're probably good guys because they've got like glowing blue shield, like it looks like the goody colors, and the other guy looks like they got the baddie colors. And then it just flips to My Way, Frank Sinatra in a field. It's just so weird.
I mean, it does. Some of the things in Stranger of Paradise pay off. Some of the narrative stuff like that pays off towards the end or at the end, and some of it doesn't. Some of it really does feel like it's just introduced and it's left there, and then there is no explanatory or kind of thing that makes it make sense. So Stranger of Paradise is a trashy game most of the time, deliberately. I don't have any sort of kind of Final Fantasy affiliation really with it, so I didn't go into it like looking for the Easter eggs or really excited to see how what looks on the surface like a very kind of disparate offshoot of the series might tie into the main game series. I didn't really go into it with any of those sort of thoughts or expectations, so I'm sure there's some stuff in there for the diehard fans that you can link to the other games, and it's cute and it's clever. So I'm really looking at it as it is. It's sort of, how it's being presented to me is how I'm absorbing it. And I've rolled my eyes a couple of times, but for the most part, I just laugh. For the most part, it is just so dumb and so silly that it is just funny. And I hope that in almost all of those cases, it's deliberate. But I think in some cases, unavoidably, in some cases it won't be. But I think it's deliberate enough of the time that it does create that vibe that I think it's going for, which is just trashy and cheesy and all of that, and so bad it's good. I mean, I have to believe that. Because otherwise,
like whether it's hard to know whether they've done it on purpose, and it's hard to know, like, or it's hard to feel empathy or like take it seriously in the moments where the game is clearly trying to be like, no, this is like a really emotional moment. This is, you should feel the relevant emotion for this moment, but you just don't, because like the game starts off, well, like I said, with My Way in a wheat field, and it's got, and then the three main characters, the way that they meet, I don't think that they share any previous history before Jack, the main character, who sounds so much, he sounds so much like Marcus Phoenix that I have from Gears of War that I had to look it up to see if it was the same, but it's not. So it's just someone doing like a Marcus Phoenix impression, but it's like even more Marcus Phoenix than Marcus Phoenix. Like it's just so ridiculous. But I love the just cheesy, horrible, almost like thoughtless way that they've decided, like, how do we get these team of three people together? Like, the guy, Jack, the main character, is just walking through the town, muttering under his breath about how much he hates chaos. And then two other people are like, I heard someone say they hate chaos. Like, we hate chaos as well. And then they bond immediately and are like prepared to risk their lives for each other. Oh, and it happens that all three of them have just got glowing rocks as well. So that proves that they're like, I can't even remember what those rocks prove, that they're like up for the fight. Basically, they're like capable of fighting chaos. I can't remember what the rocks actually do.
To that effect. Yeah.
It's just ridiculous, and like just from that whole sort of like, you can't help but just burst out laughing at just how it's just utterly ridiculous. But then it becomes kind of funny because it's like, and then you expect like a bit more exposition. Okay, what's ready? And then they're just like, right, let's go. And it's like, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, I think where it runs into some problems is where you are asked, where the developer is asking you for more, is asking you to invest more. And it's like, okay, you've been laughing, it's been fun, but just put that on hold a moment and now really get into the serious emotion of this. And it's like, no, you can't, no, we're done. You've given up that kind of, that right, or the ability to ask us to suspend disbelief to the point of me taking this seriously. This is just silly. And I think that's where it differs from, like, it makes me think of Kojima. Death Stranding starts with a song, the title of which is Don't Be So Serious. And the chorus for that song kicks in very specifically as Hideo Kojima's name appears on screen the first time.
Oh, that's where you meet the other character in the cave. Then that song starts. Yeah.
And it's like, there's stuff here that it's like, this is being set up very deliberately. And I feel like this, in a similar way, this is happening deliberately, except, there are very clear distinctions. This isn't quite Kojima's level of deliberate parody or asking you to introspect on a particular topic. This just is telling its own story.
I hate chaos now. Like, I just for some reason I'm just constantly thinking about chaos and how it just needs to be destroyed.
Yeah, it made me really want to read that that Marie Kondo book, the life-changing magic of tidying up, whatever. It's like, I hate chaos too. I'm going to tidy up my house. So I think it's deliberate. We've sort of established that. Now, game-wise, I do have some issues with the game. I think it's like it's fun enough, and there's some good ideas in it. There's some very sort of astute design in places, particularly with the combat system. But for the most part, it is just a bit of a mess in the most sort of well-meaning way. It's just, I can see where it's trying to land the hits, and in places it just doesn't work. And I've got to what is nominally the end of the game. I've seen the credits. As we said, we'll keep spoilers light. I will say that, like a lot of Square Enix games over the last few years, there is a very definite, okay, great, you've got to the end credits. Now here's a whole bunch of extra content, which oddly, retrospectively makes some of the things make sense from a systems perspective. You get to understand the job system more and really kind of what the ultimate point of it is, or not the ultimate point, but the ultimate form of that system you get to see going into the end game. And there's like an infinitely grindable mechanic that you can self-impose on certain levels to just be able to play the game forever if you really want to. So, and that has its own sort of appeal, because I can see that people that that do love this game, and there will certainly be people that do. I can see that they would really love it, and they would really like. There's a lot for them to get stuck into. It's not just a 6-hour, I don't know, like Lollipop Chainsaw kind of come in, have a splash of colour, laugh at this thing, and then go away again and not think too much about it after that. There is a lot of game here if you want there to be, if you have the stomach for it or whatever else. So I would say that, yeah, there's stuff here that happens deliberately, but there's games that I can think of sort of historically that I still think of fondly that have done it better and that have a more permanent place for me in sort of my memories. I don't think Stranger of Paradise is going to be a game that I'll be still thinking about in even a few months' time, let alone.
Well, I don't know. We're going to do another podcast when I've completed it.
Yeah, dissect it in a more serious way.
Yeah.
So this then led us to have a conversation about these kinds of different cheesy games, what that means, where the definitions are, what a game needs to have to be that, and if it doesn't have certain aspects, does it just fall into the sort of the pit of being a not very good game? So what kind of games like this for you have there been? Which games have given you the same kind of vibe as Stranger of Paradise has so far, and that sort of stick in your mind? And what, I guess, do you have like a list of things that there needs to be in order for a game to be considered cheesy / trashy versus just bad?
Well, I think on a game sense, and I think this goes probably for all games, because they're interactive by nature. The gameplay itself can't be wildly bad. Like the narrative and the characters and a lot of the peripheral elements. Not that they're peripheral elements, although, but in this they do feel like peripheral elements just because they're so weird. But so long as the gameplay itself is well enough made that it can pull you through, so I think you already need to like the genre. Like if you're not like a fan of action games, I think Square call this a hardcore action RPG, which it's not really. But,
give me a break.
It's an action game, yeah. I don't find it particularly difficult. I think one of the things that Stranger of Paradise is good at for me, I suppose, who's someone who's played a lot of these kinds of games before, is that it's just about good enough, and just good enough at feeling like making you feel like you've been rewarded. And I was going to say it's just about diverse enough in what it asks you to do. It's not, but it is diverse enough in like visually, I suppose. So you're always getting like it's like looking. What's it like looking at? It's almost like looking at like visually. It's almost like looking like at a kaleidoscope or something, and just being like almost stunned into numbness by the colors. Like it does that pretty well. Like there's a lot of just visual, just stuff happening on the screen all the time in combat. Like it will zoom in and out of different focal lengths. Like when you do like your big finishing attack or whatever, it'll always zoom in. Often bosses have some silly little, when you defeat them, they have some silly like pre-rendered sequence that was like a big sort of WWF style finishing move or whatever. But it's different from movies, like these sort of B games and B movies. Like the movies can just rely on the trashy narrative and the trashy characters, and that's funny and that'll get you through. But games with interaction, they have a whole other thing to worry about. So a trashy game still needs to be a good game on an interaction level to an extent for it to even be playable, for you even be able to get to the bits that are trashy to enjoy them on a trashy level. Like it can't just be outright bad in all ways. And still be good. And I think Stranger of Paradise just about stays on the right side of that so far. I've only played like 5 hours, 6 hours.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, I suppose it's comforting to play in it. Like the game's got a lot of systems, but I don't I don't use any of them really in depth. Like, so I just go through and I just hammer away at R1 and occasionally press R2 to do a special move and occasionally press circle to finish an enemy and occasionally like do my power up move or whatever that makes me stronger for a set amount of time. But like the job system and the battle, the gear and the weapons and stuff, I just auto what do you do? You can auto resolve, so it just
auto equip. It just gives the highest level gear. Yeah.
So I just do that all the way through, and then all I do is I just go through the game, smashing R1 and forwards, and that wins most of the time. And it's like, yeah, great, like cool. Like if I'm not looking for something that's like going to test me or is progressive in introducing like a new gameplay mechanic or combining gameplay mechanics in ways I haven't seen before. Like when we were talking the other day, I described it as like it's a perfect game to play on like a Sunday morning for like an hour or two before you go off and do something else. Like it's perfect like that. But I mean, other games that kind of fall into this category, like Lollipop Chainsaw, like you've said, Shadows of the Damned, also Suda 51 game, Friday the 13th, I've spoken about on podcasts before. I think a lot of Supermassive's games, even though Until Dawn has like a kind of more like loftier air about it, it still fits a lot of these definitions where like the characters and the narrative and some of the events that happens are just completely schlocky, cheesy things. That's exactly what Until Dawn's supposed to be. That's not like an insult. Like Until Dawn kind of gets away from the trashy bit because it's like a play on something else that's already trashy. So it seems it seems loftier, it seems more intelligent, it seems almost like satire rather than trashy, even though I don't think Until Dawn is trying to be satire.
No.
But ultimately, the gameplay in all of those, I know, they're very different gameplay between most of those games, but they're all intriguing in some way. Like those games all have something badly wrong with them, or maybe many things badly wrong with them, but the core interaction that you're engaging in does have something of value that allows you, I suppose, to like, that's the good bit of the game, and it allows you to enjoy, because you're getting the good bit here, it allows you to enjoy the trashy bit in a different way than if everything was trashy. Like you can almost like like bottle up the trashy bit and just like take a sip of that, whenever you want, alongside the main meal sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's why I think we've talked before about why, it can apply to anything, but when you're making choices, design choices, we've talked about it in terms of that if you are making a certain choice to, in this instance, to be, if you were trying to make a comment, if you were trying to comment on poor controls or gameplay that rankles a bit or that rubs you the wrong way, then you have to go really far into that to make it obvious that that's what you're doing. So something like Surgeon Simulator is like one of those things where it's the controls are just hilariously off, and they're meant to be, and that's fun. But if you tried to make that game and the controls were just imprecise rather than deliberately off, it wouldn't feel good to play, because you're being asked seemingly seriously to do this thing, but it's very difficult to do it, and it's deliberately difficult to do it. So it has to go really far down that path to make it obvious that it is being satirical or that it is a parody. Because if you don't do that, then it just looks like you've done it by accident, and that's not a good thing. And that's the thing that we've talked about. Like it's you either make it obvious that you've made a choice here and that you're pursuing a certain message or putting something out there into the world that is meant to be seen in a certain way, perceived in a certain way.
Yeah.
Or you have to do it really well. Otherwise, it just looks like you were aiming for something and you fell short of it, rather than you were trying to make a point about a particular thing. And so, Stranger of Paradise, I would say I've played it through to the end. It does. There's a lot of stuff to like about the combat system. There's some we've talked about this. The Soul Burst and Soul Shield abilities. The Soul Burst is interruptible, or rather, combat is interruptible by use of the Soul Burst ability at any time, and that is a very clever design choice, because if it wasn't, it would feel bad. If you miss the window to hit circle to do your finishing move, which gives you more magic, so these systems feed into each other, that would be annoying and it would be frustrating. But the fact that you can hit circle, even if you've started doing another move or combo, and it would interrupt that is clever. That's good design. They've sat down and thought about that, and they've made that choice deliberately. So it does err on the right side. I think it's just, I mean, it's not a game I'm going to play through again or will explore much of the end game of, but there's enough there to keep you going.
Yeah, well, you'd kind of hope and expect that the combat would be the best bit of the game, right? Like, given the history of Tecmo Koei and
Absolutely,
Dead or Alive, Ninja Gaiden, Neo. Like, not that they're not this exact same team, but like the culture in that studio understands that stuff. I was thinking, like, I wonder, and I haven't researched this to know if it's true, or they wouldn't want to admit it if it was, I suppose. But I wonder if like this didn't start life as a Final Fantasy game, because like a lot of the bits do feel kind of bolted on, and like sort of not that connected to the main combat systems. And I wonder if that's why I am able to play the game by not looking or caring or spending any time investigating and mastering a lot of the systems, because like actually the core of the game, like these things have just been bolted on. So you can just kind of go into like autopilot mode with this, and that goes to the characters as well. Like I know there's references to like Final Fantasy 1, and I think the whole vague story is supposed to be a remake of Final Fantasy 1.
A build up, I think, to Final Fantasy 1. I think is the chaos and how chaos manifests but
it doesn't feel cohesive on like a Final Fantasy style level. Like the characters feel like they're just taken from Dead or Alive, but now it's like now you're Final Fantasy, and it's like hang on. This, and I think we're going to have like a problem of like culture here between those two series. And I think
they
also,
are what they look like. They are like you look at these characters, they open their mouth, they say a line, and basically there you go. You've got your character right there. That's it. It's done. There is no big arc. They don't change over the course of the game. That's who that character is, and you know it, and it's safe. You understand it.
I don't know if you remember, if you notice this, but some of the cutscenes, like there'll be a cutscene, and then it'll go back to the main menu, or it'll go or load straight into another loading screen, and then either you select it from the main menu, or the next scene pops up, and it's just like another really short cutscene, like another like 10 or 15 second cutscene, and it's like that again, that just leads you to believe, or adds more evidence to the fact that this was never supposed to be a Final Fantasy game, and these just added cutscenes have just been bolted into like the main arc overall, because like literally that does happen. Like a cutscene ends and it loads, and then a new cutscene comes in. It's like, why would you do that? Like, why not just make it 1 10-second longer cutscene? Why don't you just combine those two into one?
Some whole chapters are cutscenes, which is interesting. I mean, that's very possible. I think this does tie into the conversation we were having last week about Elden Ring and difficulty, because I think some of the way that it allows you to play it in the way that you're describing, where you're not thinking too much about it, you're not even really interacting with a lot of the systems, you're just going like treating it as a almost like, I don't know, empty calories in food. It's just I'm consuming this thing, but I'm not really thinking about what it is, or it's not going to have any bearing on my day. But I wonder how much of that is because it defaults to story difficulty, which is the easiest of the three. There is a casual mode within story that you can do. Like you can activate casual mode within story mode. But there are three main difficulty levels: story, action, and I can't even remember what the other one is, nightmare or whatever it is.
Like that, yeah. I'm playing
something
action.
super duper hard.
Yeah, medium.
And but I think that it will default to the easiest, and then you can decide which one you want to go on. So it's kind of, again, it's like there's content there to engage with if you want to. But does the fact that it defaults to story mode make it easier mean that's for a lot of people that they will see that a bit like, when you have easy, medium and hard and it defaults to medium, a lot of people see that as that's how the game is meant to be experienced, because that's what I'm being given. That's what I'm being sort of provided with as a default. And so here it's the easiest. And so, people will go through it without even perhaps thinking about the fact that you can change the difficulty. And so it provides a certain type of experience that isn't bang your head against the wall. It's not Elden Ring. It's like bang your head against the wall again with this boss. Particularly here, as it's a lot more linear. So you do have to go through, unless you decide to do side quests, of which there aren't that many, you do have to bang your head against that wall until you get through it. And I did try, like, I was like, well, I'm interested to see if I quit out of a level once you've reached the boss checkpoint, and then I go back into that level, where does it start? I mean, it puts you back at the beginning of the level. Like, it has no interest in, like, making progress sort of, it doesn't tailor its progress to you. It's that you do these discrete levels from beginning to end. You have a boss fight in almost every single one, and that's the game. That's it.
Yeah, I wonder if in isolation, if I was just playing this game as like the only game I was playing in that moment, if I'd have the same amount of time for it, because it does make a good companion to Elden Ring in that it is much more straightforward. It is much more linear. It's much more self-contained objectives, and you always know what you've got to do. I mean, just keep going forward and you'll hit a boss and kill the boss, and then next level, go forward, hit the boss, kill the boss. Even on those side missions, I've only done a couple, but they were start at the end of the level, go backwards and kill an enemy that's appeared. Like, it's just, everything's so simple, but it's nice to have that simplicity after playing Elden Ring for, I don't know, a couple hours or a few hours, and then deciding, okay, I've had enough of making decisions. I just now want
using
to be
brain.
It's like going down a water slide or whatever and just holding on for the ride. Like it's much more like that. So yeah, playing it alongside Elden Ring, it does have it's like your little, as you say, it's your little fast food snack amongst your healthier meals for the rest of the week, sort of vibe.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, as we say, hopefully a lot of these things have been done deliberately by the development team, and it's not just that they were really aiming for something profound and that they've missed the mark by so much that everybody's now taking the mick out of it. But there are other games. It's made me think about other games where that cheesiness, trashiness, that B-movie style quality was part and parcel of the game and was endearing. And probably one of the earliest games that I can think of like that is a game called Shadow of Memories, which I believe in some markets was called Shadow of Destiny. But Shadow of Memories was how I know it. It's a PS2 game from 20 years ago, I think 2001. And that was super trashy. And it's set up. There's something about the setup for these games that I can explain that the game was there was no combat in it that I can recall. It was a puzzle adventure game. There was a time travel element. It was a very of its time game. The protagonist's name is Ike. It's set in this Germanic village. I believe it's meant to be. I don't know if it's meant to be Germany or if it's just the sort of Germanic style European village. And the dialogue and the writing and everything about it is trashy in a that very sort of overly dramatic way. And when you're talking to a lot of people, that's you notice that quite readily, because a big part of the game is conversation. You just go around talking to people to try and solve the mystery, and the mystery that you're trying to solve is your own murder, which immediately is just that's just trashy. But I loved that game. It wasn't a good game. And some of the design choices were things like, when you went back in time, I think to the 1800s or 1600s, you can go as far back in time and everything's just black and white. But your color, your character model is still in color.
Right.
And
it's like those pictures that people have on their wall from like IKEA, and it's like a black and white London scene, a
umbrella
red bus,
or something. Yeah, exactly.
Or black and white New
umbrella.
York and a yellow taxi.
Yeah. And it's so oh wow, a real choice has been made here. And then you go forward a bit by a couple of 100 years maybe, and everything is just brown. and it's so endearingly bad. But the thing about it is that it does work on a gameplay level, because it helps you to remember very clearly, because you're time hopping different timelines to try and work out, I need to solve this person's problem by going back to here and planting a seed which turns into an apple tree or something to that effect, sort of Day of the Tentacle style puzzles. And it keeps it very clear in your mind that, I need to go back to the black and white era. And that's where I was when I did that. And it works. So despite its kind of on the nose nature, it works for what you're doing. And the thing that I love about that I loved about that game was that you solve the mystery. I think it's only like 6 to 8 hours, I think, in total. I solved this mystery. There are multiple endings to it. Solve the mystery of the murder. Ike survives, and then one of the ending that I got was that he's in a bar celebrating that he's survived, and what a tough day I've had, And he has a drink, and then he goes outside the bar, and off camera, you just hear him get run down by these 2 drunk drivers who were also in the bar, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to drive home. Okay, guys, let's go." And then he gets hit by these 2 drunk drivers and killed, and he dies anyway. And it was so like, it was so dumb and so silly, but I remember it very fondly.
Yeah, I think with that though, like it sounds, I've never played it, but it sounds like it's all done on purpose, right? And I think this is like all the story elements sound like they were done on purpose, whereas in Strains of Paradise, you're not sure that they are. So that bit feels like uncertain, and then but it's kind of pulled through by the gameplay. But it's still fun to see the cutscenes in Stranger of Paradise, almost from that level of they don't even realize what they've done here, sort of thing. But in that, it sounds like it was on purpose.
I think Shadow Memories. I mean, maybe some of the narrative would be. It's like known to be tongue in cheek, but I think some of the dialogue that I recall and the voice acting of that dialogue, I think it was like just one of those weirdly. It's like almost odd that it was translated, because it was a very Japanese style game of the time, with this very unique perception of what a Western sort of Germanic village might be. It's very like theme park Germanic, it was very like, here's this little small world style ride that you go on. And yeah, I mean, it was, I remember a friend at the time that played it as well, and he was just like, this is just rubbish. This is just a really bad game. I was like, no, it's great. It's like this cheesy thing. So it walked the line between being perceived as being good to my mind. I had a soft spot for it. That's how I remember it. It's like, it was a bad game, but I don't know. I remember it fondly.
Yeah. I think like games, because some game, yeah, maybe there's a difference then between games that are kind of trashy by accident and then trashy on purpose, because Suda 51 games are like No More Heroes, Shadows of Damned, Lollipop Chainsaw. They're obviously like no mistake has been made with those games. Like the product that you get, that was all that was fully intentional. So maybe there's a difference between those. Like, and like the stories. Thinking about this as well, I wonder if like Lollipop Chainsaw, Shadows of the Damned are linked. Not like as in like they're the same world or whatever, but in Suda's mind. Because Lollipop Chainsaw is about a girl who has to save the town from zombies, and she has the help of her decapitated boyfriend around her waist.
Whereas she decapitates him, by the way. Yeah. She has to, because otherwise he's going to turn into a zombie.
Yeah, turn into a zombie, yeah. Or, and then in Shadows of the Damned, you're playing the boyfriend rescuing the girlfriend from hell, from hell. It's not the girlfriend from hell, the girlfriend who is in hell.
That's a different game.
But in there you've got a similar thing to the boyfriend. You've got the talking skull that is on, I think it's on your torch, is he? Like your wooden torch, I think. So yeah, I wonder if it's
possibly
it's
that's sort of a double hander.
Maybe a loose what do you call it? Like universe, the Suda 51 universe of games.
Yeah, I've just looked up Lollipop Chainsaw because I remember James Gunn having some involvement, and he says he co-wrote it, which I think once you know that, even if you know nothing about Suda 51 games, if you know that James Gunn co-wrote it, there's sort of little contextual clues that you can play something and think, oh, this is bad, or you can play it and think, okay, this is a deliberate attempt to do X or commentary on Y, or whatever it is.
And yeah, there's so I think you can get away with having the Stranger of Paradise style narrative issues, even though I love the issues. Like the issues have made the game really. Like if it was like more just if it was like toned down 2 or 3 degrees, like I
Yeah,
don't
it
think I'd
wouldn't
like
work.
it as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would just be it would just be boring. It just wouldn't. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I was trying to think of games that fall into and hit most of these boxes but don't work.
Mm.
So I think Resident Evil 6 ticks most of these boxes, but it's not good. It's still not good. Like, the story is ridiculous, the dialogue is crazy, like the silly, like lingering shots on characters as they like deliver this line that's supposed to like hit hard and just falls totally flat, and then it's like the flat line hits and it's like, now ponder that for 1, 2, 3, and it's like, what the hell? Yeah, but I think and Stranger Paradise has all of that as well, but it's got decent gameplay, whereas in Resident Evil 6, the gameplay is just rubbish as well. Like, I just remember like the start of that game where it's got the famous one. It's where Leon holds his hand out, or someone holds a hand out for Leon to grab. I can't remember which way around it is. It's so famous, I can't remember. But anyway, you have to like just press X or whatever to like grab the hand. It's like, why? And then like shortly before that, you have to like open a door with a QuickTime event, but you need to succeed on the QuickTime event 3 times in order to open the door successfully. But like, if you fail them, like it you just carry on until you hit 3. Like you will be going through that door. So yeah, it's just terrible. And I think that goes back to like the interactive element of the game means it's hard to make a quote unquote trashy game. Because some element of it can't be trashy, and like those super trashy, the way QuickTime events work in Resident Evil 6 is just so bad, and they're so frequent as well that you just can't enjoy any other moment of it, because it's just painful to just get to the bits that are like trashy in a good way.
Yeah, and that perhaps draws. Yeah, so like Quantic Dream games as well, I think fall into that I believe are not intended to be trashy. Some of them are, but they do have a thing for me that I think works. That I like, that it's the form and function thing. That in Heavy Rain, particularly, I remember there being certain combinations of buttons that you had to press that became difficult to press. You had to contort your hand in such a way. But I like it's quite clumsy, but I like that what you're having some difficulty physically doing this thing that is manifesting on screen as a difficult task to perform. And it's very on the nose, and it's, I mean, I can see that, you could look at that and just think it's ridiculous. Like, how am I meant to do this? But it felt like there's a well-meaning intention to link you to the events that are happening on screen, even though with the understanding that all you're doing is sat on your sofa pressing buttons on a controller. So it's like, how can they possibly make this connection? How can they make this hard? And I think with more technology, so like we've got the PS5 DualSense pads now, things like having triggers that have variable resistance does a similar thing. Like, it's hard to, I don't know, like draw the bowstring on a bow that extra bit, and that's manifested by, or represented by having the trigger become harder to press. And it's just that ambition or attempt to link you to what's going on screen. It doesn't mean that Quantic Dream games are good by and large. I mean, Detroit I reasonably enjoyed, but there's well-meaning effort there, but then sometimes it falls down because, the dialogue might be bad, or the way it's delivered might be questionable, which then turns it into this sort of cheesy thing. And it's not meant to be. It's like those games take themselves, I think, really quite seriously, but then it falls into pits, and that's where it doesn't work for me. I should have prefaced all that by saying that. That's where it's like it's not meant to be that, and it just falls into the pit of being that, and it becomes hard to see beyond it in those moments, because whatever the character's name is, it Ethan? Whatever the character's name in Heavy Rain is, calling out for his son, and it's not meant to be funny. It's like it's this really sad, poignant moment, but it's just done in such a way that it comes across as funny and memeable. That's the
I think thing. Detroit was probably the one of the kind of the vibe that you're describing. Detroit is the one that fell foul of it most, although I haven't played Beyond all the way through. That's supposed to be the bad one, isn't it? The worst one. I think with games like that, if you're going to take that more serious, like thoughtful, often philosophical tone in Detroit, then as soon as one crack appears, and the whole thing shatters because you can see through it. And if you're being told this is serious, this is serious, this is serious, and then this silly thing happens that's unintentionally silly or whatever, then you just don't have much trust in it anymore. Like you don't have trust that the design of this or the people behind it have like thought it through to the point where you can believe that it's as serious as they're telling you that it is.
Yeah. And that's what we've talked about with Kojima games, isn't it? That you can often trust that stuff's happening deliberately, it's there for a reason, whereas with other people that try to do Kojima-style stuff, it becomes like, well, but is that intentional? Were you trying to do that? And if you're not, then it creates sort of a cognitive dissonance that can break the reality a bit. Detroit, I think I was lucky with that because I went through and basically everything fit the way I was playing the game and the decisions I was making. I got kind of a satisfying payoff with Detroit, but I understand that wasn't the case for a lot of people.
There was a specific moment in that where the whole thing fell down, and reading around it online, I think I got an ending that wasn't very common for one of the characters. And then I don't want to spoil it because it's right at the end, but it's a bit that happens in like what is essentially like a junkyard, and the ending that I got there was just like, oh, okay, well, everything I did before was just pointless.
And then you're just like, oh, I'm out. I'm not buying into this anymore. I'm done. I can understand. And that is that you're going to open yourself up more likely to that if you are trying to juggle all of those different threads and narrative arcs and multiple endings. And, each thing has to mean something, but it has to mean something in isolation, but then they're trying to feed it into this bigger picture. And
it's super hard. Like they set themselves on those games, particularly Detroit, like they set themselves an incredibly difficult task of trying to give you a huge amount of options and a huge amount of many directions in which the story can go down, and have all of those fit with all of the other ones because there's multiple characters that you play in that, so everything has to fit. So it's an incredibly difficult task to get right. And because of that, it's more likely to fall over and look bad. Whereas with something like Stranger in Paradise, that is obviously much more tightly controlled. You don't make any choices as Jack or as any of the other characters that can rub the wrong way with other stuff that's happened. Everything is just delivered to you. Yeah.
And you're going to be told 1,000 times that Jack hates chaos. And where is chaos? I hate chaos. Where is chaos?
I'm going to crush chaos. Yes, I want you to crush chaos.
But where is it? And tell me, somebody.
Yeah. And I just want him to just keep saying chaos as well. Like, every time he's on the screen, if he doesn't say chaos, it's like, what are you doing, Jack? I thought you hated chaos.
You forgot your lines.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it'd be quite freeing, I think, to be a character, to be a person like Jack, and you just focus on one thing for your whole life. And I don't know what he's going to do after. Presumably, he defeats chaos. I don't know. But what's he going to do after that? His life's just going to have no meaning. Yeah,
well, you keep playing. You'll get a very satisfying payoff in that regard. It's okay. So I think we can conclude that Stranger of Paradise is, for the most part, deliberately trashy. That makes it easier to enjoy if you're so inclined to. There is a bunch of gameplay stuff, but we're not really going into that here. And then there are other games that you can remember very fondly that I think are you view them as trashy. Is there a...
Well, I was thinking, like, as I've gotten older, I'm not sure if I'm more or less patient with games like this. I think I'm probably more patient with them. I think when I was younger, I think maybe I had less patience for them. That might be because I play so many more games now. I'm around games all the time, every day, pretty much. So maybe I'm just more open to spend the time on things that I wouldn't have had either time or the money as well when I was younger to play so many different things. So maybe I'm just more open to like the kind of trashier, easier experiences because spend much more time playing more serious games that need more time and energy and thought, like Elden Ring.
Yeah, I can imagine for somebody who has less time or less means, or has been really looking forward to this game in particular, for whatever reason, because it's it's a sort of a 35th anniversary celebration of Final Fantasy. It's the next game from Neo, from the developers that did Neo and Neo 2. Maybe you really love that. I can imagine if you go into it like that, you've got more stake in it, haven't you? You've got more personally invested to either then be more put off / offended by, or you double down and that's how you end up, like, I think, with silly arguments about how, oh no, this is actually brilliant, this is a real like critical masterpiece, because of people's vested interest and emotion in it, and it's hard to separate one from the other. So yeah, if you play more games, it's easier to just be entertained by the variety that a game like this offers. Because you'll be off it in next week, you'll be on something else. So
yeah, I think you still have to have a certain mindset, I suppose, because I think the other way it could go is if you play more games, then you're more open and you have more experience of what's good and what you respect, I suppose. And then so that could go the other way, that when you play a game like this, it's like, well, I have so many points of comparison that are better than this, that this is just not valuable to me. So I can see it going both ways. And the game has had a very wide spread of reviews as well. I think some people have given it 10 out of 10, and then some people have given it like 4 or 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I've seen like 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 10, which is I think a bit harsh. That's a bit much.
Yeah. All right. Well, unless you've got anything else to say about Jack and Chaos, or
no, nothing else to say about Jack. Manly man Jack. Yeah, it's cheesy and it's it's fun. I think that cheese has its place.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Unless you're lactose intolerant. All right, well, come and tell us what you think about not necessarily Stranger in Paradise, but just any games that are a bit trashy, a bit B-movie-y. We are at Indie by Design on Twitter and on all other social networks. And you can buy our books on indiebydesign.net. Otherwise, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week.